What's up, guys? It's Rowan
and Terry
from Artist Smart TV, bringing you another episode of the HSC Economics Review. Now, this is probably one of our most popularly requested videos, right? And that is our HSC Economics predictions. We have had countless YouTube comments, messages, emails, even, I kid you not, phone calls of people checking in to go, when are these predictions coming live? And so Terry and I are looking forward to unpack these with you in today's video. A couple of quick things. First of all, what's our prediction track record actually like? So what we're aiming to do today is share with you our predictions for the HSC Economics 2021 exam. Now, we've been predicting the exam questions for the HSC exam for economics for over a decade now, and pleased to say, and quite humble at the same time to say, we've got a really good track record.
Not very humble.
Now that track record, hopefully we continue to keep it going. Over the last 10 years, we've averaged 2 out of 4 essay topics correctly predicted and 2 out of 4 short answer questions topics accurately predicted. Now, some years, it's a little worse. Some years it's a little better. It's averaged out. Last year we got 1 out of 4 essay questions. We got 2 out of 4 short answer topics, but we actually got 5 out of 8 topics in the exam accurate. And so what that showed is we just got the right topics, but we thought they were going to be in essays and they were short answers and vice versa. So just a little bit of track record in terms of how we've gone over the last decade. Now, before we dive in and share our predictions for this year, and Terry and I don't agree, so we've got some differences in here, which will be interesting. Would love, to let us know in the comments what you think about those disagreements that we have around the predictions. But before we do that, Terry, how do we approach this whole process of making these predictions? What's the approach we take?
Well, I think we just think about it from the perspective of, if you were the examiner, what would you like to examine in a whole year of economics content? So first of all, we got to understand that every year there'll be a different kind of exam committee. So you're not going to have the same people writing the successive exam. So there's going to be some slight difference. And that's why I think it's also really good that we just had that difference in opinion, Rowan. But then, we just have a look at what's been happening in the global economy, in the domestic economy, what's been tested, what do they like to test? Are there certain topics that pop up more frequently than others? Are there some that are under-tested and might actually want to make a bit of a comeback? So we look at just the frequency, the usage, and we also look at the just the relevance to that particular year.
Amazing. So let's dive in, because I think that does capture it. And what we're going to do is we're going to unpack our predictions for short answer questions first, and then we're going to dive into the essays as well. So kicking things off with the short answer questions, Terry, what's your first prediction for the short answer questions?
So I'm going with monetary policy. I know that it hasn't exactly been tested very much as an essay, but I think, in my opinion, for essays, there's just so much more interesting things you can talk about, other topics. And I think it might just be something which they do want to examine, especially just in my opinion, because there was a recent change about 1 or 2 years ago with how they assessed a certain part of monetary policy. So there was a bit of a late update. I think it took them about 10, 20 years. But a bit of a late update just regarding the nature of domestic market operations. And so I think this year was one of the first years where all the textbooks were consistently teaching the news content. And I'm just thinking, you know what? I think it's probably time that they bring that one back in, because I think they were a little shy with it for the past few years because they were unsure, are kids still using the old textbooks, so would it be unfair? But you know what? It's all consistent now, so I think they might give it a go.
And look, I disagree with Terry, but not entirely. So I think monetary policy will appear in this exam. And so it's a question of, I think as a topic, it's going to be examined. I'm going to unpack my rationale for why I actually think it'll be an essay when we get to the essay section. But I would certainly agree with Terry that there has been a shift in how monetary policy is now taught, in recognizing, the corridor mechanism and how that actually functions. But what I would say is I've actually observed a lot of schools are still not teaching it. And so I wonder if...
Well, I do, so I don't know.
That's right. Certainly I do as well in our Artist Smart classes. But what I've observed is that when I have taught it, a lot of students haven't yet also been aware of it.
Well, that is true.
And so it then makes me wonder, okay, are they yet ready to deal with it as a short answer question, which gets you to explain, how the RBA implements monetary policy, for example, or is it more likely then to still come as an essay, which I'll unpack my reasonings for the essay a little later. I would say that what I've thought for a short answer question, which I know you don't have in your predictions here, is I think the environment and microeconomic reform connected to the environment will be a short answer question. And so for me, the rationale for that is that basically the environment appears pretty much in every single HSC paper in some way, either as a short answer question or in the essay. So in 2020, it was an essay. In 2019, it was a short answer question. In 2018, it was an essay. In 2017, it was combined with a case study as an essay, okay? In 2016 and 2015, it was short answers. 2014, 2013, short answers. 2011, short answer. 2010, short answer. 2012 was the only year it didn't appear in the paper at all. So I sort of look at that and I go, there's almost in recent years an alternating pattern between essay, short answer for environment. I think the Catholic paper did include it, the Catholic trial in their 2021 as a short answer question as well. I think there's been a lot of increasing pressure this year on the government around the environment in terms of it being a topical issue. And so I just wonder as a result, given the trends that we won't, that I think we'll see, that's my pick, right? An environment and a short answer in the short answers with particularly a bit of a policy integration. So that's my pick for the first, for our first short answer question.
I think the good news about that though is even if we've got it in a short answer or in an essay, the environment's one of those topics where it's quite similar, whether it's a short answer or an essay. So I do think that's actually a really good point. Study it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it is one of those things where because it appears pretty much in all the prior papers, it's smart to get your head around it. Because I find that a lot of students understudy the environment, if I'm being really honest. That's been my observation. It's something that is like, oh yeah, okay, like I'll do a little bit of it. I know a couple of things, but maybe particularly at a policy level, it's not something that's often well studied. And so I'd certainly encourage you, don't overlook it.
And also, even if you do study it, I think it's also important that you actually study it well, because I think just knowing a few facts about environmental policies generally isn't enough. You've got to actually make it very clear how that relates to a certain economic goal, for example, ESD.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think there's plenty that you can talk about with the Enviro from an analysis point of view. There's a lot of limitations, political and otherwise, that play out, and so that can be really powerful. So let's move on to the next one, Terry. What did you have for your next prediction for short answer questions?
So I think we agreed.
Yep, we
had
did.
The free trade and protection. For me, I'll be honest with my rationale for short answers, it's really just what I think is not going to be in the essays. So I haven't really looked at a whole bunch of stuff. And, if I'm being completely honest, I don't know if the exam committee is also going to do the same thing. I think a lot of the time, short answers will just be what's kind of left over. But I mean, Rowan has his approach, I've got my approach. So yeah, I'm just going with that one because I think it's one of those topics where there's a lot you can examine. There's a lot of range there.
There is, yeah.
You can look at the different diagrams, you can look at
it's great for
policies.
Skills, which is what they try to bring in where possible into the short answers as well.
Yeah, because a couple of years back as well, NASA was actually making a big point of this. They did want to say that their exams moving forward don't want to just be a test of memory. They want it to also be a test of application. And they've been consistently making this as the last couple of multis. That's what I've known. There's heaps of tariff questions over the past few years. Hard ones as well.
Yeah.
So I just think, given that there has also been, things going on over the past 2 years with the global trade.
It's been a lot.
There's room for some, it's a good balanced question. There's room for diagrams, there's room for contemporary kind of more close, recent events. So I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would add a couple of little thoughts here. Yeah. One, I just did some of this sort of analysis on prior years. And I think that maybe the reason why protection wouldn't be a short answer question is simply that it was one as a short answer in 2020. So there was a protection short answer question in 2020. But in saying that, I think there's A, enough that's been happening, and B, as we're going to see with the essays, it is a good topic that's almost left over, right, as Terry's highlighted. Now, I would add, it did appear in 2016 and 2017 consecutively in 2 years as a short answer question. So there is precedent. Just because it was in last year's, paper, it doesn't mean it's not going to appear this year. Additionally, as a topic, it also appears in almost every HSC exam as an essay or short answer question. It's only literally going back as far as 2007. It's only not appeared in a HSC exam in 2007, 2008, and 2015. So it is a topic that, because of its versatility, I can't pronounce that word, great, because of its versatility, it appears really regularly. So my little sort of pip is that it also did appear in the independent 2021 trials, okay, this year, which is always interesting. I think if anything, they might add a little bit of like a globalization flavor to it. Again, it lends itself really well to that, right? And if they're trying to distinguish it a little bit from last year with protection, I just wonder if there's a little bit of that brought into it. But I would agree. I think it would be wise to go over and get really confident in your free trade and protection. Brilliant. What did you have next for the short answers?
I went with inflation next.
Okay.
And all I'm really doing here is I'm doing a bit of a one per topic kind of thing.
So was I.
So yeah, this was just kind of for me. Like I said, you know, I pick my essays first, then I go down to my shorts, and then basically it was just kind of the one that was left over, because I think it has been present in some essays in recent years. So I just thought it might be a nice change to, and it's also a good one just because the calculation can be a little bit tough. Yep. And I know that they do like to ask that one, you know, where you've got to find the real GDP.
Yeah, that's right.
Real GDP.
Yeah, you've got to deflate nominal and precisely. So look, I agree. I disagree in that I don't think it's going to be in shorts because I actually think it's going to be integrated as an essay. So I think it's going to appear in the paper.
Yeah.
So my take on it was that because I think monetary policy is going to be an essay, my gut was that inflation, of course, lends itself as a core objective in monetary policy, and so it's less likely then to see it as an, you know, part of an essay to then also appear as a short answer. So I thought instead of inflation, I did think, well, there needs to be a topic 3. You know, like if you look at the past papers with the questions, you know, they do get coverage across the 4 topics in the short answers. And so then when I looked at that, I looked at the fact that I thought economic growth and distribution of income and wealth could be either singularly or as a bit of a combined, because they have been recently in the short answers mixing occasionally a couple of topics in.
Yeah.
And so there is that trend. And the reason I thought that was that, well, one, and this is a little complex, like I think part of this is if they include environment without, so, you know, my pick was environment, right, for the first one. If they include it without microeconomic reform, which I doubt, but if they do, then it's unlikely that you would get then on top of that economic growth and distribution of income because they're all topic 3, right? So I was mindful of that, but I do believe that they will have a micro lens on Enviro. It's very rare that I've ever seen any short answer question with Enviro that don't, at least in the 6 or the 5 marker at the end, right, have some form of policy. So then I thought, okay, great, let's take a look at what's going on here with the sort of short answers. And again, because I've got the other economic issues, labour and so forth, addressed in essays, my thought was that this is an interesting relationship to look at, economic growth and distribution of income, because it also lends itself well to skills. Right? You can do some interesting things with the Gini coefficient. You can do some interesting things with economic growth from a skills perspective. As a result, I thought, okay, look, that's it. I did look at further data. So what I found interesting was that the Catholic paper this year had a short answer question on distribution of income and wealth. The independent paper had a short answer question on economic growth, but they combined it with external stability. And that could be the case. I took a little bit of a different approach, right? I did note that in 2020 and in 2019, both of these topics were tested in essays. So they haven't been tested recently in short answer questions. In fact, economic growth has been a short answer question in 2013, 16, and 2008. So it appears basically every 3 to 5 years. And we're now at the 5-year mark for seeing economic growth, again, as a short answer question. So I thought, look, it hasn't been tested as a short answer question for a little while. It could be possible. Likewise, with distribution and income and wealth, it has been an essay in 2020, 2019, and 2018 in some form. Also in 2014, 2011, 2010. It's been in a short answer question only in 2017, 2012, and 2007. So it's also, it's also got another 5-year sort of thing. So I'm just looking at the trends going, well, these are 2 that haven't really appeared in a short answer question for a little while, and they're super topical, and they're good skills-based questions. So potentially we could see them appear.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that essay that was done last year on distribution of income and wealth. I'm pretty sure that one was terrible. and they do have a habit of you know, picking out a couple of areas which weren't done well the previous year and just retesting it. So that would probably be my pick of the worst done topic that makes a reappearance.
And again, I see that because I think it's a topic that I find students think is easy, right? But then actually when you get into particularly the analysis and looking at some of the causes, it can be a little more complex than you necessarily thought to start with, right? And so it's a little bit like environment. I think both of them, they're at the tail end of the topic 3 economic issues. Like external stability, I find that often a lot of time can get spent on unemployment, inflation, you know, the big three. Yeah. Yes. And then they sort of just get like crammed at the end, right? And they get ignored a little.
They're the micro reforms.
Yes, of top, so true. Awesome. So then the final one, I think we're both in agreement for. What is the final one we think for short answer questions?
So the final one is just exchange rates, and I'll leave you for it because my explanation's the same. It's just I couldn't find it for an essay, so I'll leave that.
Cool. To you. So look, I did I spent ages going through all of these papers. So it was an essay in 2020, it was an essay in 2013, an essay in 2011, an essay in 2008, right? So we saw it was an essay last year, so you know, again, it's one that I think is unlikely to appear again because it's usually done fairly well, right? As in, I think students look at the exchange rate and with their choices, I find often I see students choose an exchange rate essay.
Yeah, they'll give it a go.
Yeah. And so it's been a short answer question in 2019, 2018, 2016, 2014, 2012. So basically, it's a little more popular as a short answer question, particularly because it's, again, good for skills. But it's almost got, again, that sequence of short answer question essay, short answer question essay. And so given it was an essay last year, likely as a short answer question this year, it often appears in almost every paper. 3 years in the last 13 years it hasn't appeared, right? 2009, 2015, 2017. And there's been a fair bit of stuff going on with the dollar recently because of COVID and the volatility that it's created. So I think for all of that, it's all compelling reasons why. Again, given that we don't think it's going to be an essay, that I think it could really well appear as a short answer question. Amazing. So there are picks for short answer questions, guys. Before we dive into the essays, let us know in the comments, right, what you think about the predictions for short answer questions.
Whose team are you on?
Oh, geez, we're going to make it like this. Team Terry or Team Rowan in terms of, you know, particularly, right, I think where we disagree, you know, Terry thinks monetary, I think Enviro, MER for shorts, although I think monetary will appear in the paper. And then Terry thinks inflation, I think economic growth / distribution of income and wealth. They're the main differences, I think, for short answer questions. Let's dive into the essays, though, because I think we've also got some disagreements here as well.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I'm just going to get Captain Obvious out of the way. In my genuine opinion, I believe that they are going to continue on with their obsession with fiscal policy in recent years. And I think they'll just kind of add little different flavors to it. And so this year, I think the flavor they're going to go with is just that net debt aspect. The reason I say this is just because for the independent paper, there was a questioning that was exactly based on that. There was obviously a lot of discussion about this this year in this year's budget. And I think it's also a very accessible essay question because I think when they do make those exams, especially for the stimulus questions, I think there is a desire to try and make it something which, you know, even students who haven't necessarily been that focused throughout the course can access. And one of those things is always, fiscal policy, because every student remembers the budget, right?
We'll watch the budget, right? Budget parties.
Yes. I don't know about the budget parties, but everyone at least knows one thing about the budget. So I think it's definitely really popular. There's also a lot of great quotes they can draw from for that stimulus. So for that reason, I think it's a really strong contender for stimulus. And as I said, you know what, my personal favorite, the independent paper, had it in there. So I'm going with fiscal policy.
Going with fiscal.
And net debt.
So look, it was quite interesting when I started the predictions. I thought fiscal policy as well. Now I have made a decision that I don't think it will be because I think it'll be examined in another question. So I actually when I started building out my rationale and doing the analysis, I actually flipped from fiscal to monetary. And I actually thought, you know what, I think monetary may appear in this paper. And so my rationale is that it's actually been very undertested as a standalone essay in recent years. So in 2020, we had a macro essay. So it was combined, okay, fiscal, monetary. In 2019, we had a fiscal. 2018, it was another macro. 2017, it was a macro. 2016 was the last time we had a monetary policy essay as a standalone. So we've had macro and fiscal, which is to your point about the obsession with more fiscal in the recent years, okay? And what I found interesting is I went all the way back, right? 2015, 2013 were macro again, okay? Basically, 2012 was macro and micro combined. 2011 was fiscal and monetary. So monetary is pretty much, from what I could basically work out, only been tested really once almost in the last decade as a standalone essay question. Now, that on the one hand makes it a little risky as a prediction because, yes, it means that there's not like a trend here that we can necessarily see. But on the flip side, it sort of told me, well, it hasn't been tested and not very much. Now, I can understand why over the last couple of years you might not have wanted to have a monetary policy essay. And that's simply because not a lot was happening with monetary policy.
Hasn't worked.
Sorry?
Hasn't worked.
Well, yeah, it hasn't worked and not a lot was happening. My sort of perspective is, as I was looking at this, was to go, well, you know what, actually, you know, the cash rate, while it's remained relatively unchanged, you know, we've seen, you know, quantitative easing, we've seen alternative forms of monetary policy come into play, we've seen, you know, increased liquidity support for banks. We've also seen the role of monetary policy change this year. So we've seen, you know, the RBA update the Nauru. We've seen the RBA actually officially shift their policy stance, you know, much more to dealing with unemployment, actually, in terms of wage growth and wanting to get towards the Nauru. And so I just wonder, right, that this year out of the last 5 years, we've seen probably the most interesting things really start to flow out and occur. Even, you know, and that really started towards the end of last year, honestly. And so I think if there is a likely time they could do it, given it's been very undertested as an essay singularly, given that a lot's happening, my thought was potentially this year. Now, I note the Catholic paper did have a monetary policy question in it. They didn't have a fiscal, they also went with the monetary. So the Catholic and Independent actually disagreed on this year. And my thought is, both Terry and I will unpack this shortly, we have a perspective around another essay question that we agree on, and I actually think fiscal will form a part of that question, which is why I think it's unlikely that we'll see fiscal in 2 questions across the 4 essays, which is why I think, you know, it's more likely going to be a monetary policy question this year. So that's my rationale. But who knows? We'll find out, won't we? Awesome. What's the next one, Terry, that we have here?
So we actually have a happy agreement.
We do?
Which is nice. And this one is just the balance of payments. And for me, I just looked at both the Catholic and the Independent paper, and I saw that it was actually present in both. And I also just thought there was some interesting things going on with the fact that our current account surplus has continued. And so really, that was just what convinced me, you know what? And also going with my theme of one topic per essay, let's make that our topic 2 essay. Yeah,
great. No, look, and I agree. I think one, we've got, you know, historical current account surplus. You know, we haven't had, you know, for what, 40 years or something crazy, right?
45,
I think more. Yeah.
44.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot, right? And one, there's that. Secondly, it means that it's an interesting question because it really is going to encourage, you know, you as a student to really have to flip a lot of the approach, because for so long, this has been taught as the CAD. You know, it's not a current account, it's we have a CAD. And so, again...
You think we have a CAS?
Well, now we do, but I mean, historically, we've always taught it just as a CAD. We haven't talked about it as a current account that is either in deficit or surplus, because we've just always had a deficit. We've just talked about it as a CAD.
I mean, literally in the syllabus, it's referred to as a CAD. So
exactly. And so it's the reasons for, you know, a CAD. It's what are the ongoing consequences of a CAD. And I think this makes it interesting, right? We're now needing to look at and apply the theory to a current, because the theory still stands. It's just applying it to a current account surplus. Now, what I would say is that 2020 did have the AUD and external stability as an essay, which touches upon it a little bit, right? It's not explicit, but there is a relationship, which means that it's like, okay, will they bring it this year? I think they still will, particularly because the current account surplus itself wasn't really the focus of that question. Balance of payments is often a question that's not done particularly well, like external stability is an area that, as we talked about, people forget about. And so I think it is probable. On top of that, if we look at it, it wasn't examined in 2019 at all. The CAD last appeared, because it was a CAD at that point, it last appeared as an essay question in 2018. 2017, it was a short answer question. 2016, it was only a little bit addressed as part of trade and financial flows. And then if we go back 2013, 2014, it was a short answer question. So I think what it shows is that, one, it almost appears again in every paper, except for 2019 and 2015 being the exceptions. And it basically occurs as an essay every 2 to 4 years. And so what's interesting is that we're at the 3-year mark of a current account style question as essays, which is smack in the zone. It's undertested, and it also is in the independent Catholic trials, as you said.
I think there's just maybe one thing we should probably just look out for, though, is I think they are trying to, like, I think you mentioned that, you know, they haven't done an awful lot with the CAS. They are probably going to get quite creative with how they assess this one.
Yeah.
I think there's room for them to just, you know, really blow it out of the water. Because I think in 2018, if I remember, that they were starting to do that. They were like focusing on assessing factors, you know. And so I think, it's not going to, I don't think if they do it, I don't think it's going to be something that's straightforward. No. I think it's something which will really force you to really understand your balance of payments and see how everything connects.
That's right, I agree. It's going to be really, I mean, I think increasingly we've seen that trend where the questions are really pushing students to get the interconnections between things. And so, look, what I would suggest is, you know, like ultimately, I actually think if you can nail your balance of payments, it's a huge differentiator because it is one of the harder components of the entire course. Adding the current account surplus to the mix has made it a little more complex. And so if you're able to really get your head around it and do that essay well, you know, I think it's a real big positive, right? In terms of being able to just really stand out relative to the fact that I would imagine, from what I've seen at least, and you can agree or disagree, like most current account essays, they have a lot of work that needs to be done to them, right? Is me generously saying that they've got a lot of room to grow.
A lot of room to grow.
Yeah. Awesome. What's the next one that we have? So we both agreed on that one. I think, what about this one?
So I've just continuing with my theme, really, just of having one per topic. The next one for me is just employment and just looking at labour policies. I thought, like touching on what you were talking about earlier with the monetary policy and how that's shifted its focus towards reaching, you know, a new Nauru target. I think for me, since I didn't include monetary as an essay, this is kind of where I'm slotting that in. I do think it's quite a big topical focus. And so I think there is room to talk, and there's also, you know, just so much that's been happening with fiscal. So if you think about my fiscal one, it wasn't necessarily focusing that much on, you know, employment. It was looking more at the debt side and probably
more external stability
and growth. And so I think, you know, just with what's been happening, and also, like, it's such a lovely thing to assess. They love it. They absolutely love it because they know that you hate it. They know that you guys hate the labour market policies, and they just love to throw it in there. So for me, I think it's just a nice little perfect storm there. You know, that it's topical, that students hate it, and that there's been something going on.
So look, I think maybe with a little tweak, like I think yes, labour market and full employment will appear. As I said, I know net debt is of interest. They did include an external stability essay last year, which is why I sort of ended up skewing away from thinking that and going with monetary. I think they will have a labour market and full employment essay here as well. I mean, I think both the independent and the Catholic had some form of labour market full employment style question in it for 2021 as well. The reason I think this, and it is a little tricky, because last year they did include in the essays a full employment and economic growth essay, which in part was getting you to talk about, you know, policy as well. I think though, right, while that on part of it may make it less likely to appear this year as an essay as well, I think that question in last year's paper was very macro focused. It didn't include any look at micro in terms of labour market policies. And there has been more changes this year because of COVID last year to labour market reform. Now, it hasn't been significant. There were attempts to do some things, but we've got, for example, an 11th national employment standard now this year, right? Which is new. You know, we had 10 for many years. We've now got an 11th one. You know, there was a lot of talk around minimum wage increases and would that happen? Would it not happen? There's been a lot more talk and policy that was implemented earlier in the year as well around part-time and casuals because of both flexibility during COVID, but also concerns around casualisation of the labour force, which is an issue. So I do think there's been a lot topically going on that makes labour markets and unemployment an essay that is probable. Now, it also combines then topic 3, topic 4, which I think is interesting. Now, the reason I didn't include fiscal earlier is I think this is an entry point into fiscal. So my take on a labour market unemployment or full employment essay is that the bulk of actually what you would be talking about here is labour market policy, so, you know, fair work and the updates, and fiscal policy, JobKeeper, job seeker, job trainer, job maker, the list of jobs, right? And so my take is that if you have this, it's why I think it's unlikely to have a fiscal policy essay on its own, because there's actually a lot of fiscal policy that you could be combining. Now, I do concede as well that, yes, monetary has shifted a little bit more to the NAIRU and a full employment objective. It's still, as I said, I still think because of the undertested, I'd separate that out in a separate question. What I would add to this is that labour market reforms is also quite undertested as an essay.
Yeah.
So if we focus on the micro side of this, right, like it was an essay in 2017, it was an essay in 2014, interestingly combined with fiscal at that point as well, and then it was an essay in 2007. So in like the last 13 years, it's only been really tested 3 times, and one of those times it was combined with fiscal as well. So it's almost overdue given the recent updates we've been having. Like I can see why it was undertested in that period, because there's not a lot that always happens. But we've had something happen, which is why I think it's definitely possible. Okay. Now, just as a quick note, right? It's interesting. The independent trials had a microeconomic reform essay, while the Catholic had a full employment, right? And so it is interesting that they're both circling around the potential of like labour market being in there, but they've just got slightly different angles in how they've attacked it. And so I can see why the independent thinks micro reform, simply because it was only examined as a short answer in 2020, and it's almost got a one-off, one-on SAQ, essay alternating structure in terms of past papers. But I think given labour market's been so undertested, I really do feel that that will be a part of this. Do you have anything else on that one to add?
No. Pretty
cool. And then we've got our final one here. We've got a final, and then we've got like an additional, like, just in case, guys. You know, here's another like extra bonus, just because you want a bonus topic to revise.
Yeah, you do another essay.
Yeah, exactly. What do we have for this one, Terry?
So yeah, we've got an agreement between the two of us. This one is just a case study. Now, this was probably the only essay where I actually looked at you know, just the kind of trends, and I said it shows up every 2 to 3 years, and it has been 3 years. So I thought, you know what, if we follow with that trend, a case study should make an appearance.
Well, this will be the 4th year, actually, if it doesn't appear this year, because it was 2017 last.
Yep.
So it is a little overdue, actually, based on that pattern.
Sorry, I was filming for last year. I think, as Rowan said, it is definitely overdue. And I think, you know what, there's been some really, really recent developments, you know, just with how different countries have responded to COVID. And so I think, there's a lot of potential there, just if they're getting the heads of the examiners, just, you know, there's so much that we haven't touched on. Let's revisit and let's give it a shot. And it's just, again, for me, just filling out all the
topics. Yeah, I was going to say, at the moment, across both of us, globalization topic 1's a little
neglected.
Yeah, it's a little neglected, right? And if we've thought, which we have, that protection and free trade will likely appear in short answer questions because of the fact of where it was, and also we think global categories of development is unlikely because it happened in short answer questions last year. Okay. I think it was in short answer questions last year, but it was in the paper last year. Then it's like, okay, great. Well, we probably need to have something here. Now, I definitely agree. I think case study will appear. What I observed is the reason I think I thought that they were skewing away from it, in part, was that there was a sense that you could memorize something around a case study. And often I know a lot of students would, you know, they'd understandably write the report, memorize it, and it wasn't necessarily challenging students enough from an application perspective in terms of applying things. And so the last time it was examined in 2017...
it was weird.
It was weird, right? They specified you had to talk about economic growth and environment. And so you could see that if you had just memorized your broad response, you would get caught out on that question.
Because everyone just does the policies on growth and development, so...
Yeah. So I actually think if they're going to include a case study, I think there's going to be maybe a little tweak around it.
I agree.
And I think the thoughts I had around tweak is they could get you to look at distribution of income and wealth, because again, it's one of the big things that you look at related to eco-development, okay? there's a lot of interesting data on a lot of countries around it, so you could flesh it out. It could be that they get you to focus on strategies related to economic development, not growth, because again, they're a little different and they connect into that.
I think it traps the students who don't make a good attempt at actually clarifying that difference.
That's right, definitely. And I did see a short answer question. I think maybe it was in the Independent paper, or somewhere. I did see a trial short answer question this year starting... Catholic, yeah. And so what's interesting is I think, you know, again, if they're going to do it, they are going to try to look at being a little creative. Now, the other thought is they may even get you to do a comparison between Australia and your case study, which, again, is doable, but it gets you to have to really think outside the box a little bit. And so if you're going to do the case study, don't just go and do your typical, like, yep, get my report out, try to memorize as much stuff as it is possible. Like, look at, okay, what are some of the trickier style questions they could throw here at it, and then try to do some targeted revision around that for case study. Because what I'd hate to see you do is go, oh yeah, case study, great, walk in with your memorized, you know, like fairly typical strategies and response sort of approach, right? And then get a curly thrown at you and go, uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
I'm in danger.
Yeah, exactly. Any other comments on that before we jump into our bonus pick?
Yeah, well, I just want to touch on what you're saying about the comparison essay. That has actually been done before, so it isn't without precedence either. So
yeah, that's right. You could get that. And I think it makes for a really interesting essay, to be honest.
Yeah.
In terms of, particularly around, if we look at it, you know, it actually is an interesting integration between topic 1 and topic 2. Topic 1, global economy. Topic 2, Australia's place in the global economy. All of a sudden, that question is a really good interconnection between the two topics. So if they're wanting to be creative, that's certainly going to fit the bill. What's our final bonus topic, which we actually agreed on, which was cool to see? What did we have for this one?
I just had the international organizations and trading blocks slash you know, any other kind of free trade thing you want to tack onto that. For the main reason that topic 1 continues to be relatively untested, neglected, uncared for. So I think we just want to show it a little bit of care. And again, you know, for similar reasons with the case study, there have been some pretty interesting developments. For me personally, I think, you know, just seeing how different international organizations and trading blocks and all that have responded to COVID, I think is a very interesting point to assess, to see, you know, who's been paying attention in class, who's been actually digesting and understanding, because a lot of their roles have actually, you know, shifted, like it's been increased, you know, and I think an understanding of that would be a great thing to assess, and also just the fact that it was present in my favourite, the Independent paper.
So, look, I would agree, like it was last examined in 2015 and then 2008. So, I mean, look, only 2 data points, but that's 7 years, right? Where almost there at 6 years this year, if my maths is correct. And so I think one of the reasons it's undertested is that, honestly, pre-COVID, the role that international orgs, certainly at least, has played has definitely waned globally, right? You know, there was a sense that, you know, failure of, you know, multilateral trade agreements, short of the Paris Agreement in 2015, you know, in terms of the UN's role with the Climate Council, there hadn't been a lot happening. And so if you're trying to look at trying to give a question that enables you as a student to have some interesting things to say, I get why they didn't have it. That's changed, as Terry's highlighted, right? You know, we've got the WTO, the UN, G20 definitely taking on, even OECD, right, taking on much bigger roles in terms of really global policy alignment, not just economics, certainly health we've seen as well. And so I think that makes it interesting. I also think, you know, the interesting trade relationships that have been continuing to play out also make it potentially quite likely. It is super undertested in this course. Like, as we said, an essay in 2015 and 2008, a short answer question in 2011 and 2016, but only on a small way. It was not even the core focus of that short answer question. So if we look at it, it's like, wow, like this has been probably one of the most unattested areas in the last decade. And as Terry said, Independent has also picked it as an essay. So there we have it. There are our predictions, guys. Now, just a quick, you know, Team Terry, Team Rowan here. We'd love to know your feedbacks around our predictions for the essays as well. I think, honestly, the main difference is our fiscal policy versus monetary policy pick. I think that would be the main difference. I think monetary, you think fiscal. And then maybe a little bit of a tiny difference around full employment, the full employment one. Like we broadly think that topic's there, but I think I have a slightly different flavour on what I think the focus will be compared to yourself. But otherwise, I think we're pretty much in alignment there, which is really awesome to hear. So let us know in the comments. We'd love to know what you think is going to be likely as a question and your rationale for why or why not. If you think we've got something horribly wrong in our predictions, let us know in the comments. We'd love to know. And let us know, of course, which ones, based on our recommendations, that you think are more likely. If you've got any questions about studying for your HSC Economic exams, let us know in the comments. We'll do our best to help. Otherwise, really all the best.
Yeah, good luck.
It's a tough year for HSC Economics. Lots has been going on. I think it's been exciting, but as a student, definitely, it's tough life, having to keep up with all of this. So I know, we wish you all the best.
Yeah, really.
Smash these HSC Economic exams. Let us know how you go at the end of it. We'd love to hear how you went. Yeah,
it's been a great ride with the class of 2021. I know it hasn't been easy for you guys, but we hope that we were able to assist you, at least in some form.
Definitely. Awesome. And if you just love economics and you're finishing your HSC, we're going to still do more of these, so, keep subscribed. And you'll see us more for some more HSC Economic reviews. See you guys.
See ya.